today I am here to give a presentation about project scope management. My team members are myself and Shabir Wahid. Well, before moving on to my presentation, I would like to highlight what do we mean by project scope management. Well, managing the project itself is called project scope management. Well, the primary goal of it is to control what is and what is not part of the project. For example, it will be checking whether our project scope is defined and mapped accurately with what we are trying to do, which allows project managers and supervisors to allocate just the right amount of work necessary to complete a project successfully. Moving on, I will be highlighting what is scope. Scope is, in other words, it is what need to be achieved and work that must be done to deliver a project, which involves determining and documenting list of specific project goals and also deliverables, functions, milestones and deadlines, and also the cost related to the project. What is deliverable? Deliverable is a term used in a project management to describe tangible or intangible product. In other words, it means the end product of a project, which means what others or the customers could see. Internally, it can be internal or external. For example, a software will be a deliverable, or the documentation would be a deliverable. Now, project scope management process, these are the orders it will go. First, we will be collecting the requirements. That means we are going to gather information what is needed and what will be during a project, as well as process used in creating them. That means documenting the features and functions of the product. So defining the scope. Here what we are going to do is reviewing the project charter, requirement documents and organization process assets to create a scope statement. Now, creating the WBS, that means work breakdown structure, subdividing the major products deliverables into smaller, more manageable components. In other words, you could say this as a division of task. Now, fourth one is verifying the scope, which means formalizing the acceptance of project deliverables. Now, the last one is controlling the scope. Controlling the scope means controlling the changes to project scope throughout the life of the project. Whether we have to control the financially or about the milestone or about the time. Now, what are the requirements needed for a project? A requirement is a capacity or a condition that must be filled or possessed by a system or a product or a service, result or component to satisfy a contract, standard, specification or other formal document. That means it should have a certain quality into it. For some IT project, it is helpful to divide requirement development into categories called elicitation, analysis, specification and validation. It is important to use iterative approach to defining requirements since they are often unclear early in a project. The methods for collecting requirements. There are different ways to collect the requirements. For example, you can interview a person, you can survey, you can focus on the focus groups, also prototyping, software tools, facilitated workshop also. Through these mediums, you can collect the information or gather your requirements. Now, documenting requirements. That means we are going to document what we have collected the information. The information which we collected, we are going to document or we are going to save it as a form of, it can be a writing or an image or a diagram, or it can be a video or other media. They are often broken down into multiple different categories such as functional services, performance, quality or training. Now, A requirement management plan describes how the requirements of the project will be analyzed, documented and managed. Now RTM, which is Requirement Traceability Matrix, is a table that lists requirements, various attributes of each requirement and the status of the requirements to ensure that all the requirements are being addressed. Now approaches to developing WPS. First, we are going to use the guidelines. Some organizations like DOD provide guidelines for preparing WPS. The analog approach, reviewing WPS of similar projects and tailor to your project. For example, use similar parties or your rival companies or other approaches you can use as an analogy to approach. The top-down approach, that means start with the largest items of the project and break them down. That means you are going to resize the project into smaller tasks. The bottom-up approach starts with the specific tasks and roll them up, well as mind mapping approach. Mind mapping is a technique that uses branches radiating out of the core idea to structure through thoughts and ideas. Now verifying the scope. Scope verification is the process of formalizing the acceptance of the project scope by the stakeholders. For example, it may be a sponsor, it might be a client, it might be a consumer. It requires review and work products and results to ensure that they were completed correctly and satisfactory, whether they have approved it or not. Scope creep is the tendency for a project to get bigger and bigger. For example, what we have planned might not be the accurate one, it might go bigger and bigger. That is called scope creep. Problems. So first thing is, keep the scope realistic. Don't make the project so large that you cannot complete it. So break the project into smaller ones so that you will be able to finish it. Involve users in the project scope management. That means assign the key users to project team and give them the authority or delegation. And use of the shelf hardware and software whenever possible. Many IT people enjoy using the latest technique. Instead of that, what we know we can apply into it. Follow good project management process. That means there are well-defined processes for managing project scope and other aspects of the project. Now, how to improve user input? Well, develop a good project selection process and insist that sponsors are from the user organizations. Have regular meetings with defined agendas and have users sign off on key deliverable presented at meetings. Deliver a portion of the project or something related to the project to users and sponsors on a regular basis so that they will be connected to us. Don't make false promises, especially on delivery dates. Co-locate users with developers. Have users participation on the project team in important roles so that they will be able to input their own ideas also. Now, how to reduce incomplete and changing requirements. Develop and follow the requirement management process and then put requirements in writing and keep them current. Create a requirement management database for documenting and controlling the requirements. Provide educate testing and conduct testing throughout the product lifecycle. Review changes from a perspective of the system. Emphasize completion dates to help focus on what's most important. Allocate resources specifically for handling change requests. Use techniques such as prototyping, use case modeling and JID to get more user involvement. And the last, conclusions. So, project scope management includes the process required to ensure that the project addresses all the work required and only the work required to complete the project successfully. The main process includes collecting the requirements, managing the requirements, defining the scope, creating WBS, that means work breakdown structure, verifying the scope and controlling the scope. I hope you have learned about this topic. Thank you for listening.